I will make sure you get thrown out of this place!
I want to enter the company as a security guard.
A security guard?
Ma'am, could you hold your badge a little closer to the scanner?
I've worked here for 3 years. You're an idiot.
Someone filed an anonymous HR complaint against you. What kind of complaint?
Inappropriate conduct with a female employee.
Someone is trying to ruin me. I don't know what I did to deserve this.
You did nothing wrong. Someone sees you as a threat.
My son has been among you for 6 weeks.
I have watched how you treat the people you believe are invisible. What if the quiet security guard standing in a company lobby was actually the heir to a billion-dollar empire? And what if the way people treated him revealed who they truly were? In today's story, a billionaire son hides his identity and spends 6 weeks working as a security guard inside his family's company. What he discovers exposes hidden ambitions, shocking betrayals, and one woman whose kindness never changes, no matter who stands before her. When the truth is finally revealed, lives are changed forever. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your support.
Margaret Williams was not the kind of woman people ignored. When she entered a boardroom, conversations adjusted themselves. Voices dropped a register. Postures straightened without anyone deciding to straighten them. She had the particular gravity of someone who had earned every inch of the ground she stood on, not inherited it, not married into it, but built it herself, from nothing. During years when the world was not especially interested in helping a black woman build anything at all. Williams Corp had offices in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. It had warehouses, real estate holdings, and a portfolio of investments that made financial journalists use the word empire without hyperbole. People respected Margaret because she was wealthy. Those who knew her well respected her because she was something rarer than wealthy. She was strong in the way that only people who have had everything taken from them and kept going anyway can be strong. Her husband had died 14 years ago. Their son Nathan was 9 years old at the time. A lot of people had quietly expected her to fall apart. A few had even positioned themselves to absorb pieces of the company. When she did not fall apart. She cried in private, wiped her face, and went back to work. She attended every meeting, signed every contract, settled every dispute, and protected everything her husband had built, while simultaneously building more on top of it. The small firm he had left her became something much larger than either of them had imagined. But the company was not her greatest achievement. Her greatest achievement was Nathan. He had been abroad for 3 years, completing his MBA in London. He was 28 now, calm and measured in the way that people who have thought carefully about who they want to be tend to be calm and measured. Margaret spoke about him with restrained pride. She had not raised him to be soft. She had raised him to understand that money could purchase comfort, but could not purchase character, and that the difference between the two was the only thing that actually mattered. He was coming home. Sandra, Margaret's secretary of 11 years, stood beside her desk on a Tuesday morning, with a folder of quarterly reports and a look on her face that said she already knew what was on her boss's mind. "You're thinking about Nathan," Sandra said. "I'm always thinking about Nathan." Margaret set down her reading glasses. "And I'm thinking about what comes after Nathan comes home. Marriage. Marriage." Margaret folded her hands on the desk. "Sandra, you've been in this industry as long as I have. You know what money does to people around money. You know what my name does to women who are considering my son. Some of them will love him. Some of them will love what he represents. And the problem is that from the outside, those two things look identical for long enough to cause serious damage." Sandra was quiet for a moment. "You already have someone in mind. I've been watching 3 young women in this company for several months. Emily Carter in finance, Vanessa Blake in marketing, Chloe Reed in administration." Sandra's expression was carefully neutral, which told Margaret that Sandra had opinions she was choosing not to share. Margaret appreciated that quality enormously. "When Nathan comes home," Margaret said, "I intend to speak with each of them. But I also know that what people show in a formal conversation with their CEO is not who they are. It's who they want to appear to be. Then what will you do? Margaret picked up her reading glasses again. I'll wait and see what Nathan proposes. He's his father's son. He'll have something. Nathan arrived on a Thursday afternoon, stepping off his flight, with a single carry-on bag and the easy, unhurried manner of someone who had learned not to confuse motion with progress. Margaret was waiting at arrivals. She had not sent a driver. She had come herself. She held him for a long moment when she saw him. You look like your father, she said, when she finally let go. You say that every time you see me. It gets more true every time. They drove back to her house in relative quiet, the kind of quiet that belongs to people who are comfortable enough with each other not to fill silence unnecessarily. Over dinner, when Nathan had eaten and rested, Margaret told him about the three women. She gave him their names, their departments, their general impressions. She told him what she hoped for and what she feared. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he set down his fork and looked at her steadily. If I walk in there, as your son, he said, they'll perform. Even the bad ones will perform well enough to fool me for months. I need to see who they are when they think they're not being evaluated. And how do you propose to do that? I want to come in as a security guard. Margaret looked at him. A security guard, she repeated. Nobody looks at security guards. Nobody modifies their behavior for the benefit of a security guard. People say things in front of security guards that they would never say in front of management, because in their minds, the security guard isn't really there. He paused. And there's something else. I want to see how they treat a black man they think has no power. That tells you something real, Mom. That tells you something that a dinner invitation and a formal introduction never will. The dining room was quiet. Margaret looked at her son for a long time. You understand that some of the people in that building are not going to be kind to you. That's the point. You won't expose yourself when it happens. I'll hold it together. This is a hard thing you're asking yourself to do. I know. He met her eyes. But I'd rather know the truth before a wedding than after one. Margaret sat back in her chair. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Only 3 people know. You, me, and Marcus. Marcus is solid. He's been with me 7 years. He's the most trustworthy person I've ever employed. She picked up her glass. I'll arrange it with Jake in building security. Jake doesn't need to know who you are. As far as he's concerned, you're a new temporary hire. What name do I use? Your own. Nathan is common enough. No one will connect it. He smiled, just slightly. Then I start Monday. Nathan arrived at Williams Corp. before most of the staff on Monday morning, wearing a dark navy security uniform that fit well enough to be unremarkable, a plain black cap, and a laminated badge that read Nathan, Security. He looked, in every meaningful way, like exactly what he was supposed to look like, a young black man doing a job that the building needed done but rarely thought about. Jake, the head of building security, was a compact, straightforward man in his 50s, with the particular tiredness of someone who had spent decades being reliable in ways that went largely unacknowledged. Williams Corp is a professional environment, Jake told him. You represent the company the moment you put that badge on. Eyes open, tone neutral, and no matter what anyone says to you, you respond calmly, and you report it if it's a problem. Don't try to handle things yourself. Understood. Jake hesitated. And one more thing. Some of the staff in this building have strong ideas about who deserves their courtesy and who doesn't. Don't take it personally. Just do your job. Nathan nodded. He understood exactly what Jake was telling him, and he appreciated the warning, even though he had spent the better part of his life receiving variations of it. He took his position at the main entrance and waited for the day to begin. Emily Carter arrived at 7:45, 20 minutes before most of her colleagues. She was carrying a tote bag over one shoulder and a travel cup of coffee in her hand, and she moved with the particular efficiency of someone who had learned to be self-sufficient early. She was fair-skinned, with light brown hair pulled back simply, not beautiful in the way that demanded attention, but lovely in the way that becomes more apparent the longer you look. She stopped at the security station, reached into her bag for her badge, and handed it across. Then she looked up. Good morning, she said. It was such a small thing. 2 words, and nothing special about them except that she said them to him directly, as though he were a person standing in front of her rather than a function being performed on her behalf. "Good morning, ma'am," Nathan said. "Emily," she corrected, with a slight smile. "Ma'am makes me feel like I'm 50. She took her badge back, slid it into her pocket, and walked toward the elevators. Nathan watched her go and said nothing, but he filed it away carefully. Asterisk, she sees people. Asterisk. Vanessa Blake arrived at 9:15, and no one in the lobby could have missed her. Her heels struck the marble floor with a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate, like punctuation. She was striking in a way that she clearly understood and used: dark hair, tailored dress, perfume that preceded her by several feet. She walked toward the security station without slowing down and held up her badge at arm's length without looking at Nathan directly. The scanner beeped a rejection. She was holding the badge at the wrong angle. "Ma'am, could you hold it a little closer to the reader?" She looked at him for the first time, and her expression was the expression of someone who had just discovered an inconvenient piece of furniture in their path. "I've worked here for 3 years," she said. "The system needs a clear scan regardless, if you adjust the angle." She dropped the badge onto the security counter rather than handing it to him. He picked it up, scanned it himself, and handed it back. She took it, without thanks, and walked to the elevators. Nathan watched her go, and filed that away too. Chloe Reed came at 9:30. She was composed in a way that was clearly cultivated, dressed in a way that was careful, without being obvious about its carefulness. She handed her badge across, with both hands, and a pleasant smile. "Good morning. You're new, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am. Started today." "Welcome." She paused, while the scanner processed her badge. "Morning shifts can be long. Don't hesitate to take your breaks." "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it." She took her badge back and walked toward the elevators. As she turned the corner, her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it. And Nathan, who had been watching from his peripheral vision, saw her face shift into an expression of calculation, so different from the warmth of 30 seconds ago that it might have belonged to a different person entirely. He filed that away as well. The first week taught Nathan more about Williams Corp than 3 years of quarterly reports would have. People spoke freely around him. They discussed things in the lobby, in the hallways, in the elevator bank, that they would never have said within earshot of management, because in their mental architecture, he was furniture. He learned that Vanessa had been telling people she expected to be introduced to Margaret's son within the month. He learned that Chloe had been asking quiet questions about Nathan Williams wherever she thought she could get useful answers. He learned that Emily had stayed until 9 o'clock 3 nights in a row to finish a reconciliation report that her department head had assigned to her at the last minute, and that she had not complained about it to anyone. He also learned, watching carefully over multiple days, which of the 3 women was the same person in public and in private. Emily Carter was the same person everywhere. She greeted the cafeteria staff by name. She held the elevator for the mailroom clerk. When a junior analyst made an error in a shared spreadsheet, she corrected it, without mentioning it to the analyst's manager. She did these things when no one of consequence was watching, which meant she did them, because they were simply what she did. Vanessa Blake was the performance of a person. Around senior staff, she was charming, articulate, and professionally impeccable. When she thought she was unobserved, she was someone else entirely. Nathan watched her speak to a young intern, as though the intern were an inconvenience rather than a human being. He watched her drop a coffee cup near a trash can, miss, and walk away, without picking it up. He watched her speak about colleagues in terms that made Brittany, her companion in these conversations, visibly uncomfortable. Chloe Reed was the most sophisticated of the 3, and in some ways the most troubling, because her performance was good enough that it took Nathan nearly 2 weeks to identify the seams. She was warm and thoughtful in public. She said the right things about respect and kindness. But in private, when she thought the audience had gone, there was a coldness behind her eyes that told him her warmth was instrumental rather than genuine. She was not cruel like Vanessa. She was strategic, which Nathan had come to understand was a different, and in some ways more dangerous quality. The pantry on the 7th floor was small and slightly dingy, with a coffee machine that produced something that approximated coffee in the way that a photocopy approximates an original. Emily was there on a Wednesday evening at 8:15 when Nathan was completing his final sweep of the floor before the end of his shift. He heard her before he saw her. She had dropped a stack of files in the hallway outside the pantry, and he rounded the corner to find her crouched on the floor, gathering scattered papers, with the focused expression of someone who is very tired and choosing not to be upset about it. "Let me help you." She looked up. For a moment she seemed about to say no, "It's fine," which is what people often said when they needed help most. Then she simply moved to one side and let him gather the papers on the other. They sorted them in silence. When the stack was reconstructed, she stood and said, "Thank you." "Really?" "Of course." She looked at him more carefully than she had before. "You look like you've had a long day." "So do you." She almost laughed. "The coffee machine in here makes terrible coffee." "But it's still coffee." She paused. "Do you want some?" "The pantry's empty." He should have said no. He was on duty. But Jake had told him his shift ended at 8, and it was past 8, and there was something about Emily Carter in that moment, tired and honest, and without any of the performance he had been watching for weeks, that made him say yes. They sat across from each other at the small table with 2 cups of genuinely terrible coffee, and they talked. She told him about her father, who had died when she was 16, and about her mother, who had worked 2 jobs to keep them in their apartment after he was gone, and about how she had studied finance because she wanted to understand money well enough that it could never ambush her the way it had ambushed her family. Nathan listened. He did not offer easy comfort or redirect the conversation toward himself. He simply listened, which was something Emily had apparently not encountered in professional settings, with enough frequency to have stopped noticing its absence. "You're easy to talk to," she said finally, with the slight self-consciousness of someone who has shared more than they planned to. "You're easy to listen to." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "What about you? What's your story?" "I'm working on it," he said. She accepted this, without pushing, which told him something. She did not need to know everything. She was comfortable with the idea that people were allowed to have parts of themselves they were still figuring out. They did it again the following Wednesday, and the Wednesday after that. They settled into it, without discussing it, the way people settle into things that feel natural, and Nathan found himself thinking about those evenings during the parts of the day when he was watching everything else. On a Thursday in Nathan's 4th week, Vanessa did something that he had not anticipated. He found out, through Marcus, who came to find him during the lunch hour looking contained in the way that careful men look when they are delivering bad news. "Someone filed an anonymous HR complaint against you this morning." Nathan went still. "What kind of complaint?" "Inappropriate conduct with a female employee." "After hours." "Unspecified." Nathan looked at Marcus. "Pull the camera footage. Every evening I've been in this building, I want the full record." "I already requested it." The footage was reviewed that afternoon by the HR director, Marcus, and Jake. It showed Nathan, on every single evening in question, conducting himself with complete professionalism. The only footage of him in extended conversation with any employee showed 2 people sitting at a table in a well-lit pantry, with the door open, talking. There was nothing in it that any reasonable person could characterize as inappropriate. The complaint was closed without consequence. But the whisper had already moved through the building in the way that whispers do, faster than corrections, sticking to surfaces that retractions cannot reach. Nathan noticed that 2 members of the accounts team who had previously greeted him in the hallway now found reasons to look at their phones when he passed. He went home that evening and called his mother. "Vanessa filed an HR complaint against me." "I know. Marcus told me." "She didn't have any evidence, because there isn't any. But the damage of the accusation runs ahead of the verdict." "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." He paused. "I'm more concerned about what she does next." "She's not going to stop." "No," Margaret agreed. "She won't." 3 days after the HR complaint was dismissed, a manila envelope appeared in the inbox of Williams Corp's chief financial officer. Inside was a printed financial report with Emily Carter's name on it. Several figures had been altered. A handwritten note on a plain white card read, "*You may want to verify the accuracy of reports coming from this department." Emily was called into the CFO's office on a Tuesday morning. She sat down across from him, and he slid the report across the desk. She looked at it for 30 seconds without speaking. Nathan would learn later that in those 30 seconds, she was doing what she always did under pressure, going quiet and going precise. "This isn't my report," she said. "It has your name on it. I can show you my report. It's in the system with a timestamp." She paused. "This has been printed from outside the system. The formatting is slightly different, and the font is a point size smaller. Someone printed this specifically to look like my work." The CFO asked IT to pull the original file. The timestamp confirmed Emily's account. Her document was clean, accurate, and had not been modified. The printed version in the envelope had been created separately. The investigation should have ended there. Technically, it did end there. But the timing of the accusation, arriving the same week as whispers about a security guard and an employee, created a compound impression in the office that no formal verdict could fully reverse. People looked at Emily differently. Not everyone, not even most people, but enough people, in enough small ways, that she felt it. Nathan found her in the pantry on a Wednesday evening, not making coffee, but sitting at the table, with her hands flat on the surface, staring at nothing. She was not crying, but she was close to it in the way that people who are determined not to cry look when they are very close. He sat down across from her. "Emily." She looked up. There was something in her eyes that made him want to abandon the entire pretense on the spot, to tell her who he was and what was happening, and that none of it was her fault. He held it together, but barely. "Tell me," he said. She told him about the document, about the look the CFO had given her across his desk, about the IT review that cleared her, and the whispers that the IT review could not reach. "Someone is trying to ruin me," she said quietly. "And I don't know what I did to deserve it." "You didn't do anything." "Then why?" "Because someone sees you as competition. And they're scared of you." He paused. "You haven't done anything wrong. This is going to be resolved. I promise you." She looked at him with an expression that he could not quite read. "You say that with a lot of confidence for a security guard." He held her gaze. "Trust me on this one." That night, he asked Marcus to pull the printer logs for the 8th floor for the previous 2 weeks. The logs showed one print job executed outside of business hours, from a workstation registered to Vanessa Blake's department. The document produced matched the dimensions and file size of the fake report. The evidence was clean and clear. Marcus delivered it to the CFO the following morning. Emily was formally exonerated. Vanessa was called in for a formal discussion with HR and asked to explain the printer activity. She could not. The investigation remained open. Vanessa changed tactics. She could not beat Emily in a system that insisted on evidence. She would beat her in the court of public perception, where evidence was optional and impression was everything. On a Monday morning, when the hallway outside the marketing suite was at its most populated, Vanessa stopped walking and spoke at a volume calibrated to carry. "I don't understand some people. Honestly, you work in a professional environment, you have opportunities, and you make choices that just..." She shook her head, with the expression of someone reluctantly disappointed. "Not everyone knows their own value, I guess." Brittany stood beside her, with the attentiveness of an audience member who knows their role. Emily came out of the finance office at that moment, files in hand, and Vanessa turned to face her with the particular smile of someone who has prepared for this. "Emily," she let the name land. "We were just talking about professional judgment, about the decisions that define people." She glanced at Nathan, who was standing at the end of the hallway. "You know what I mean." The hallway had gone quiet in the way that hallways go quiet when something is about to happen. Nathan watched Emily from the far end of the corridor. He watched her stop walking. He watched her take a breath. He was already moving forward when he saw her lift her chin. "Vanessa," Emily said. Her voice was steady in a way that clearly cost her something. "I've noticed you have a lot of opinions about my choices. I find that interesting, since my choices have nothing to do with you, and everything about how you're behaving right now has everything to do with fear." She paused. "I don't judge people by their title, or their salary, or what they look like. I realize that seems strange to you. But it's not going to change." She walked to the elevator and pressed the button. The hallway was very quiet. Vanessa's smile had not moved, but something behind her eyes had shifted. She turned and walked in the opposite direction. Brittany followed. Nathan stood at the end of the corridor and watched Emily step into the elevator. The doors closed. He did not move for a moment. She had not needed him to intervene. She had handled it herself, and somehow that made what he felt about her sharper and more certain than anything else had. Chloe Reed did not make scenes. Scenes were Vanessa's instrument, and Chloe had always understood that subtlety was more powerful than noise, in the same way that a slow leak is more dangerous than a dramatic flood. She had been watching Nathan since his third week, not in the way Vanessa watched men she was interested in, which was openly and with intent. Chloe watched the way analysts watch data, looking for patterns that did not fit the model. The problem was that Nathan did not fit the model of a security guard. He was calm in the specific way that people who have been trained to manage rooms are calm, not the passivity of someone accustomed to being overlooked, but the restraint of someone who has chosen not to use what they have. He spoke in complete sentences. He did not fidget. When people were rude to him, his response was not the resignation she would have expected from someone in his position, but something closer to patience, the patience of a person who knows that the situation is temporary. She began to run a quiet parallel investigation. She brought pretextual work questions to Marcus, using them as cover to study what he did not say. She asked Sandra, Margaret's secretary, gentle questions about the family, disguising them as small talk. She positioned herself in spaces where Nathan was likely to be and watched him from her peripheral vision. One afternoon, she cornered him near the security station when no one was nearby. "You're not what you seem," she said. "I'm a security guard." "Maybe." She held his gaze. "But if you were something more, I want you to know that I've always respected you. I saw something in you from the first day." Nathan looked at her quietly. "You saw something in me from the first day," he said. "Is that why, on the first day, when you greeted me very warmly in front of your colleagues, and then turned the corner and your face changed completely, you looked at me like you just stepped in something?" A very small pause. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." He held her gaze for a moment longer. "I appreciate the conversation, Chloe. Have a good afternoon." He walked away. She stood still. For the first time, something behind her careful composure was genuinely unsettled. Nathan called his mother at 10 o'clock on a Thursday evening. "It's time," he said. "You're sure?" "I've seen what I needed to see. 6 weeks is enough. I'll arrange the announcement for Friday." He was quiet for a moment. "Mom, I need to do something first. Emily doesn't know who I am. She deserves to hear it from me before she hears it in a room full of her colleagues." Another pause. "Nathan, I know. Do you know what you're doing? I know that she's been attacked twice in the last 3 weeks by someone trying to use her association with me to damage her, and she's handled it with more grace than I would have. She deserves the truth before the room does." Margaret was quiet. He could hear her thinking. "All right," she said finally. "Tell her tonight." He found Emily on the 7th floor at 8 o'clock, the hour that had become theirs, without either of them formally declaring it. She was in the pantry, but she was not making coffee. She was at the table, with her hands in her lap, and she looked tired in a way that went deeper than one long week. She looked up when he came in. "Nathan." He sat down across from her. He had rehearsed this. The rehearsed version was already gone. "I have to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to let me finish before you respond." She looked at him steadily. "My name is Nathan Williams. Margaret Williams is my mother. I've been here for 6 weeks as a security guard because I needed to understand who the people in this company were before I walked in as her son and heir. I needed to see who was real and who was performing." He paused. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I want you to know that what's been happening to you, the HR complaint, the document, the things Vanessa has been saying, none of it is random. She identified you as someone she considered a threat, and she's been trying to remove you. That's going to be addressed tomorrow. But I wanted you to hear the rest of it from me first." Emily looked at him. The expression on her face was not what he had prepared for. He had prepared for anger. He had prepared for hurt. What he saw was something more complicated, a person processing a significant recalibration while keeping the rest of themselves very still. She was quiet for a long time. The coffees, she said finally. Yes. The pantry. The Wednesday evenings. Yes. All of that was, she stopped. All of that was real, he said. The only thing that wasn't real was the badge. He held her eyes. Emily, the reason I'm sitting here telling you this tonight instead of letting you find out tomorrow with everyone else is because none of this started as a test of you. You were never on a list. I didn't know you before I walked into this building. Everything that happened between us happened because of who you are. He paused. I need you to know that. She looked down at her hands. Then she looked up. You should have told me. Yes, I should have. I'm not angry. I think I'm going to be angry later when I've had time to think about it. Right now I'm just. She exhaled slowly. I need a minute. Take as many as you need. She sat for a while. He waited. Does the coffee machine in here make anything that isn't terrible? She said finally. He almost smiled. No. Okay. She looked at him across the small table. Make me a cup anyway. The conference room on the executive floor was at capacity by 9 o'clock on Friday morning. People had heard there would be an announcement. The specifics varied depending on who was telling it, but the consensus was that Margaret Williams was going to introduce her son, which meant that today was the day the building had been waiting for. Vanessa had dressed accordingly. She looked, as Brittany told her admiringly, like someone who expected good things to happen. Chloe had dressed more carefully. Not too much, not too little, the calculated elegance of someone who had done their research. Emily arrived in what she usually wore because she had not gotten much sleep and because she was thinking about other things. She sat in the middle of the room, not toward the front, where she could be easily noticed, and waited. Margaret Williams entered at 9:15. Beside her, in a charcoal suit that fit him the way expensive things fit people who have grown up surrounded by them, was the security guard from the front desk. Vanessa stared. The room processed this information at different speeds. Some people got there quickly. Some needed the second or third look. A low wave of murmured surprise moved through the assembled staff before settling into the peculiar silence that follows a significant and irreversible revelation. Most of you know me, Margaret said. You know this company, what it is, and what I've worked to make it. What you may not know is that my son has been here among you for the past 6 weeks, working in building security. Learning this organization from the ground up in the position that gives you the clearest view of how a company actually treats its people, which is to say the people who deliver things and clean things and guard things, the ones that professional hierarchies tend to render invisible. She paused. Nathan is going to speak to you now. I'd ask you to listen carefully. Nathan stood at the front of the room and looked at the assembled staff with the same quiet steadiness that Chloe had identified weeks ago and been unable to fully explain. He did not look triumphant. He did not look like someone enjoying a reveal. He looked like someone who had done a necessary thing and was now going to do another necessary thing. I've been in this building for 6 weeks, he said. I've been in the lobby, in the hallways, in the stairwells. I've been in the spaces that most of the staff in this room walk through without seeing. And I've watched how this company treats the people it considers invisible. He looked around the room. Some of you were kind. Consistently, genuinely, without any awareness that it mattered. Some of you were not. He paused. Williams Corp is going to change. Not our product, not our market position, not our financial targets. Our culture. The way we treat people who cannot do anything for us. The way we speak to people we believe are below us. He said it clearly, and without anger, which somehow made it land harder than anger would have. No member of staff will be treated with disrespect based on their title, their compensation level, the color of their uniform, or the color of their skin. That is not a value we hold aspirationally. It will be a standard we enforce. Violations will go through formal HR processes, and those processes will have teeth. He let that settle. Compensation for security, maintenance, and junior staff is being reviewed effective immediately. Rest spaces for building staff are being upgraded. An anonymous reporting channel for workplace mistreatment will be operational by the end of the month. He paused. Thank you for your time. The room was still for a moment. Then someone started clapping, and it spread. Vanessa Blake was called into HR on Monday morning. The evidence against her had been assembled carefully, printer logs, timestamps, the camera footage from the 8th floor showing her at the machine, after hours, the metadata trail from the fake document that led back to a workstation she had accessed. The HR director laid it out in sequence, without editorial comment, and asked her to respond. She could not. She was terminated for document falsification, creation of a hostile work environment, and filing a false report against a colleague. She was given the option of resigning before the formal termination was processed. She resigned. It did not change the substance of what had been recorded. The people who had admired her were not cruel in the aftermath, but they were quiet in the particular way people go quiet when they are revising an opinion they held strongly. Brittany spent 3 days avoiding the hallway, where their conversations had usually happened. Chloe Reed kept her job. Her performance record was strong, and the evidence against her, while sufficient to remove Margaret's trust, was not sufficient for formal disciplinary action. She was moved to a different department, one with less access to sensitive information and no proximity to executive decision-making. She continued to do her work well. She was polite to her colleagues. She was, as she had always been, impeccable on the surface. She never asked Nathan for anything again. She had understood, in that hallway conversation weeks ago, that the door was closed, and she was smart enough not to knock on a closed door. Emily Carter was offered a promotion to senior financial analyst 2 weeks after the announcement. The offer came from the CFO, who had reviewed her work record and determined that she had been operating at a level above her current classification for over a year. The promotion was not connected to Nathan, except in the sense that everything that had happened in the previous 2 months had caused several layers of management to look more carefully at things they had been too distracted to look at before. She accepted the offer on a Tuesday afternoon and told Nathan that evening in the pantry. "Congratulations," he said. "I need you to know this isn't because of you. I know it's not because of me. It's because you're excellent at your job." She looked at him. "I'm still a little angry with you. I know. You let me think things about you that weren't fully true. I let you know me," he said. "The rest of the context was incomplete, but who I was in those conversations with you wasn't a performance. I wasn't running a test on you. I was just a person who wanted to know you." She was quiet for a moment. "The note," she said. "The one that appeared in my files one morning. Asterisk, don't let this office steal your peace." Asterisk, was that you? Yes. She looked at her coffee cup for a long moment. Then she looked at him. "Nathan Williams," she said. "For a billionaire's son, you are occasionally very stupid. I know, but you are also occasionally very right about things." He waited. "I'm not angry anymore," she said. "I thought I would be for longer. But I keep thinking about the fact that when I was sitting in this pantry trying not to cry, you sat down across from me and asked me to tell you what was wrong. And when I told you, you didn't try to fix it with words. You actually fixed it." She paused. "That's not nothing." "It's not nothing," he agreed. The wedding was not large. Margaret had offered large, and Nathan had discussed it with Emily, and Emily had said that she would be happiest with something small and honest, which was exactly what they did. The ceremony was at a venue in Connecticut with families and close friends, early on a Saturday morning when the light was good. Margaret held Emily's hands before the ceremony and said the things she had thought about saying for several months. "You entered my son's life as a stranger. You treated him with dignity when he had no obvious reason to expect it from you. I've watched you navigate attacks against your character and your career with more grace than I could have managed, and I've been doing this for 30 years. She paused. "You are not the daughter I expected. You are better than what I could have designed. Welcome to this family." Emily could not speak for a moment. Then she said, "Margaret, thank you for raising someone worth knowing." Margaret laughed, which was not a sound her staff heard very often, and which was warmer and more genuine than anyone who only knew her professionally would have expected. At Williams Corp, the changes held. The anonymous reporting channel received 42 reports in its first month. Most of them were minor, small daily indignities of the kind that accumulate invisibly until someone builds a system to catch them. Everyone was reviewed. A majority resulted in some form of action, ranging from mandatory training to formal reprimand. The maintenance team got their upgraded rest space in month 2. The compensation review resulted in raises for 63 employees in non-executive roles. Jake, the head of security, received a salary adjustment that finally reflected the scope of his actual responsibilities. He did not make a fuss about it, because he was not the kind of man who made a fuss. But Marcus reported that he had started coming to work 5 minutes earlier than he used to, which was the closest thing to a celebration that Jake's particular character allowed. Nathan ran his division of the company the way he had spent 6 weeks watching it, from the floor, looking for what the official view obscured, listening to the people whose voices were easiest to ignore, making decisions that took seriously the question of who would be affected and how. He was his mother's son. He was also, in ways that Margaret noted privately and with satisfaction, something she had not fully planned for. He was better than what she had built, because he had learned from what she had built and then asked what came next. On an ordinary Wednesday evening, several months after everything had changed, Nathan and Emily were in the 7th floor pantry. The coffee machine had been replaced with a better model as part of the building upgrades. The new one made coffee that was, by objective measure, significantly less terrible than its predecessor. "It's not the same," Emily said, looking at her cup with mild suspicion. "It's better. I know it's better." "That's not the same thing as the same." Nathan looked at her. She was smiling in a small way that meant she was not really complaining, just saying the thing she was thinking, because that was what she did, with him, said what she was thinking, without calculation. "Do you know what I remember about the first time we were in here?" he said. "The coffee was bad. You told me about your father. You'd never met me before that evening, and you were tired and frustrated and not on guard the way people usually are, and you just told me a true thing about yourself." She was quiet. "I knew then," he said. "I want you to know that. I know the context was complicated, and I handled it imperfectly. But I knew then." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached across the small table and put her hand over his. "Nathan, yes. Stop being profound and drink your better coffee." He smiled. "Yes, ma'am." She did not correct him this time. Margaret Williams kept a photograph on her desk from the wedding day. Nathan and Emily standing together in the morning light, laughing at something that had happened just before the picture was taken. She did not know what it was. She had not asked. Some things did not need to be explained to be understood. She looked at it sometimes, when the work was hard, which was often, because good work is often hard. And she thought about what her son had told her after his first week on the security desk, when she had asked what he was learning. Character, he had said. You can't manufacture it, and you can't perform it forever. Eventually the real thing shows. She had raised him to believe that. She was glad to have lived long enough to watch him prove it.